Hey guys, in this video we are going to focus on some of the gold trim for the book. Now what we're going to do is make a new folder and we're going to grab one of those presets, kind of like we've been doing before. There's a nice gold pure. The brass is probably pretty close as well, but we'll just grab this guy, put it inside the group. And looking at the reference, just kind of a quick critique on the color, that's kind of more orange, a little kind of warmer. This is a little too yellow. So we're going to go down to color, click that, and I'm just going to move the hue down just a little bit. Okay, maybe boost the saturation up. There we go. That feels just a little closer. Now after that, you can see that we need to troubleshoot a problem we're running into with the height detail, also the normal map. So for some reason, even though we've made a brand new material, it visually looks like the normal details from the leather and the fabric are pushing through and causing the gold to have all these little bumps and imperfections. Now, of course, there are going to be some situations where something like this is exactly what you want. So if you imagine like painting over a really bumpy like stucco wall or concrete, or spray painting graffiti on like a brick building, you'd expect those kind of surface details from behind the paint to kind of affect the way the paint looks. But for something like this gold trim, I don't really want that effect to happen, right? The gold trim is really its own thing. I wouldn't really want these bump details and the normal map from those two guys to have any effect on what the gold's doing. So how do we fix something like this? Well, there's two things causing this to break. The first thing we want to do for troubleshooting is we want to go look at the material itself. And I always kind of like to know, what does this preset come with? Because remember, we're not really building these from scratch. We're just dragging stuff, from this pre-created library. And a couple of these guys don't have color options. This one doesn't have the height enabled. And that has to be related to this, right? There's no height. So if I turn on height, what's going to happen? Well, we're going to enable that on the material, and it looks like nothing has changed. Now, this is still important. We definitely want this on, because the gold does need height detail, because I want to lift it up a little bit off the surface, but there's still one other thing that's causing this to not work. So this kind of whole concept we're going to talk about here is going to be something you're kind of battling with a little bit through most of these projects. At the top of the layers, you can see this little drop down where it says base color. We've been in here the whole time, but at any point you could click between your different material properties, and you can see how every single material property, metallic, normal maps, roughness, whatever your material's using, they all blend together using these guys. And if you've ever used Photoshop before, you've probably seen a lot of these. Multiply, addition, min, max. They're all very common blend modes that we see in many, many different types of softwares. So usually when we're layering things together, we're used to seeing it default at this thing called normal. And what normal means is the layer or the group set to a normal blend mode is just going to cover and replace whatever is beneath it, which is great. The color is doing that. But look at the height when I swap back over to this one. See how the blend mode is different? The height blend modes are not set to normal, which means the gold's height isn't just doing its own thing. The gold's height is doing linear dodge, which is also basically addition. Addition means since every single material is just defaulting at this, they're all adding height details together. Now that is kind of why we kind of get this compounded effect where like all the heights are kind of pushing through to the surface. It's just coming from addition. Now to fix this, it's super easy. What you need to do is on the group of the material that's the problem, you're going to change that blend mode to normal. Now in order for this to work though, when you put it to normal, the material itself does need a height attribute. If there was never a height property on the material, you'll see that even though we did change it, it's not doing anything. So there's two things you want to look into. Does the material have height, and what is the material and or the group's blend mode set to? put it to normal, you should probably notice that it takes care of itself. So now that that's out of the way, let's try to get the masking all set up. So on the group, we're going to make a black mask. Okay, there we go. Let's add a paint effect to that. And let's go to my brushes. We'll just kind of reset this just in case I've clicked anything. So I'm going back to basic soft. There we go. You can see it in the viewer. And I'll just paint just to make sure. Yep, it's working. Good. Now, a couple of things I'm going to do here to kind of make sure this doesn't give me any issues. We've kind of talked about this one before, how this kind of caused the brush to kind of bleed into weird areas. I'm going to put it to UV because I feel like it's going to be easier for me to paint in the 2D kind of UV setup. The other big one is the sizing of the brush. Now look what happens when I move the brush near the edge of the shell. See how it's like changing scale? Now it's trying to auto scale the size kind of based on what it thinks the size of the UVs in the object are. Now sometimes you do want this to happen. But I think for what we're doing, because we know we're just going to paint these nice even straight lines, and I know the UVs are fine, I don't really want the brush to keep like auto scaling. That's going to be kind of annoying because you'll see the brush thickness change on you erratically, and we might get some weird blobby sections. So if you ever notice that happen, we're going to change the brush size to texture, and as soon as you go to texture, not only is it a little faster, but the brush isn't changing scale. Now I'm going to do a command right click, bring this down. We'll go to maybe something kind of like that and just make that a little sharper. I think that should look pretty good. And we're already set to white. So yeah, we should be able to just paint on this and knock it out pretty quick. So I'm not going to do the whole thing, but let's just do the top. So click there, hold shift, drag right down the side. There's a gold strip. Looks good. Come over here, same thing, click, drag over there, another nice gold line. You can see they look really crisp. I don't see any weird issues where it got kind of messy. Yeah, that looks really good. And I just would repeat that on this side over here, but just hold shift, draw your lines, and you're all set. And there are a couple things too in the bind we're going to end up using this for. So if I kind of back up here and look at the side, the same thing I'm doing with the little gold strips, you could do the exact same thing for some of these straight lines. But we'll get into the text and the other sort of shapes in the next video.